And now, the moment you've all been waiting for. You're tuned in to Tapped Out. Hosted by Brendan Tobin and Sean Levine. Only on the BetQL Network.
Welcome back. Final segment. You're almost tapped out here on the BetQL Network. We appreciate Eddie Law of Cage Side Press joining us with our producer, Jake Noaker, and Brendan Tobin. I'm the sports machine, Sean Levine, and let's put a bow on this bad boy. UFC 284 is now just 1 week away, and it feels like, man, we've been talking about this one for a long time because you kind of see it coming, right? Like, if Islam was able to beat Charles Oliveira, then he was going to, I guess I could say, have earned the respect, have backed up the talk. Like, that one fight does that for you. And then you got Volkanovski, who's essentially wiped out an entire division where he's had to fight Max 3 separate times. You could kind of see this super fight coming. It's crazy now that we're here. I wonder how much the odds are going to shift. It feels like the closer we get to the fight, people are going to come to their senses and go, hold on. Yeah, Islam's great. And yeah, he was incredible against Charles Oliveira. And a lot of people thought Charles Oliveira was invincible. And I do think he should be the favorite. Don't get it twisted what I'm saying. I think he should be the favorite. I think he should be a 2-1 favorite, not a 4-1 favorite, which is why money is going to come rolling in on Alexander Volkanovski. Because the flip side of that for Volk BT is there's not a way to beat him. It's not like somebody's put the key in the lock and twisted it. Nobody's been able to do that, at least for, 6 years now. So I'm going to unload on Volkanovski because the odds are just too good.
I get it, man. Like, look, you feel like you're getting one of the best fighters on the planet. When are you ever going to get Alexander Volkanovski at this number? So
Never.
I totally get the logic for it. I'm fascinated, though, to see how he's able to go about it. Like, can he keep something like this on the feet? Does Islam show that he's not just a one-trick pony? He's shown that he's got some hands. He's got some skill set there. And it's a big size difference. Like, it is. And we've seen even with some of the best in the world, you think like Jan versus Stylebender. There's a reason why there are weight classes. Now, it's a little bit bigger of a jump because you're talking 20 pounds there at 185 to 205 as opposed to a 10-pound difference. But it's a dangerous fight for Volk for sure. But I think one of the things that you got to respect about him is, it took him a long time to get his flowers. I think that's why, he mentions to us, don't change the narrative on him now, because I think a lot of that happened after Holloway. We're like, oh, of course he was going to win. But I remember I was a doubter of him. I was like, no, I think Holloway's better. I think Holloway is the better heavyweight. And, man, he made me look stupid in that third fight because he dusted him up and made Korean Zombie look like a bum. Made, Brian Ortega had a couple of moments, but outside of those moments, he cleaned up a very, very dangerous fighter. And so he probably could sit there and he could rule he's going to watch his belt get defended that night or fought for that night with Emmett and Yair, and both of those guys are really capable guys. Are they on his level? I can't say that they are. So it's not like he's leaving a division he couldn't rule over for a little bit more with some other fights. So I respect the swing of history, man. You have to. That's he's a very confident guy and he's going for greatness. Because if he wins this fight, man, if he wins this fight, it's I think a game changer for his legacy.
That's literally the next question that I was going to ask you. So I guess brilliant minds do actually think alike. Brendan Tobin and the sports machine, Sean Levine, talk a little fighting here on the BetQL network. I asked him that question, right? Or I guess it was more of a statement. I told him, I said, hey, man, this is the one. It was the last thing I said to him. So if you missed it, check it out on the app or on YouTube. Our interviews are everywhere now with Alexander Volkanovski. I told him, I was like, dude, if you're able to take out this guy, who everybody's already putting as the next Khabib, as unbeatable, as a longtime champion, as a sitting champion, and you're able to take him out as a 3-1 underdog, like all these different things at home with all the pressure. Remember, this fight's in Perth, Australia next week. So all this, and if he takes him out, yeah, beating Holloway 3 times was great. Taking out the Zombie was impressive. The way that he was able to get out of those chokeholds against Brian Ortega was incredible. You know how much I think about Chad Mendes and Jose Aldo and those type of guys, and he took out all of them. So this is the one, though, where we start to talk about his all-time greatness if he's able to win, especially if he finishes it. Like, can you imagine if Islam gets finished? Can you imagine if Volk, let's just say, just dream with me here, jumps on his back and chokes out Islam? We're going to get those goosies you always talk about.
Yeah, and you're talking about 45 and 55. I mean, those are two of the most stacked divisions in the world. Like, it's why Conor is so special. Why what he did was so special, because you tore through a 45 that was stacked full of talent, and then you went and won the belt in arguably the most talented division at 155. So if he's able to go do that, I think that's why he's like, hey, remember how we all think about Islam Makhachev right now. Remember what these odds were. Everybody thought that it was long because, he's right. Media can be a thing where if he does go out and do this, we may say, well, maybe Islam wasn't all he was cracked up to be. But, right now, the odds are telling you everybody thinks this guy is pretty much unbeatable. And that he is this big a favorite against the number one pound for pound fighter on the planet. So if you go and you beat him, yeah, I think it's not going to have the hype of being Conor McGregor dual champion, but maybe it should, because that's very, very impressive.
Think about the pressure from Islam's side. Like, not only do you not have Khabib, but you're a 4-1 favorite, and you're going to his backyard, and everybody's talking about how great you are, and now you're the champion. If you lose, it's certainly not embarrassing losing to Alexander Volkanovski. Maybe the fact that you were that heavy of a favorite is going to be tough in the locker room after the fight, but that's a lot of pressure, man. A lot of pressure on the shoulders of Islam. I would say much more pressure than that of Volkanovski. When you're that big of an underdog and everybody tells you you're going to lose, at that point, if you lose, that's kind of what's supposed to happen. The co-main event, not too shabby. We got Josh Emmett, friend of the show, versus Yair Rodriguez. And rumor has it, Josh Emmett about to become two-time friend of the show. So we think we're probably, there's a good chance we're going to have both those guys on the show next week, right?
That's the word, man. That's what the people at the big promotion tell us. So we should, as we do, we bring you guys the heavy hitters every single week. No pun intended on the show, but the UFC's very. I gotta always give a shout out to their media relations department. They're very good to us, and supposedly we will have both ends of the co-main event. Should everything go okay. It's in Australia. I'm sure we gotta account for like a koala attack or something.
Sure.
Make sure everybody's okay. Get to the interview.
We've done it before, though. We had on Robert Whitaker. We had on Israel Adesanya. Once you had those guys on, you texted me. You're like, "Hey, man, can you like put 10 minutes aside this afternoon for Style Bender?" And I think my response was, "Shut up, don't mess with me." And the next thing I know, we're FaceTiming. I'm like, "All right, dude, I'm not going to mess with this guy." So I don't know how Brendan gets these guys, but he does. Emmett versus Yair. How do you see the fight going? I feel like I've said this a lot tonight. I'm going to say it again. I don't know why Emmett is an underdog in this fight at plus 140. I'm not saying he should be a favorite. I'm saying it should be a pick'em. Both these guys can beat you a bunch of different ways. I mean, Josh Emmett's shown us that he's got that one-hitter quitter power. In the case of Yair, that dude might give you a spinning wheel kick or an elbow to the face or choke you out, or that guy can beat you anyway. How do you see this one going? And are you surprised that Yair is that big of a favorite at minus 165?
I'm not. I think that, people are looking at Josh Emmett. They maybe think that he got a favorable decision last time against Calvin Kattar. Very, very close fight. But, Yair, that we were very much looking forward to him versus Ortega. And Ortega ends up getting hurt in that fight. So we didn't really get a clean finish into it. But both these guys are super talented. I think that if they weren't fighting each other and, Volk would have stayed, that they both could have, harbored themselves right there in that number one contender spot anyway. It's such an interesting thing because you have the guy who feels like with Josh Emmett, he's so straightforward. He's as, fundamental as it gets. And then you have Yair who can, as you say, do crazy things, up elbow you, spinning kicks. He's like a martial arts movie. So I think it's just going to be upon Josh. Can he just avoid those big mistakes? Because that's what it feels like Yair is going to be looking for. He's going to be looking for Josh to miss in certain spots, and he explode with something that he can really, really hurt him with. But, I think that this is one of those where you're kind of going off of Yair's style and sizzle a little bit more than Josh, who, maybe isn't the most exciting guy in the world personality-wise. But, man, if he does land and he does connect, he can put your lights out, dude.
So what if I got like 15, 20 bucks left in my BetMGM account, but I want to bet on fights tonight? And I know that I have to wait a while for the Black Beast to go at it with Sergey Spivak. That might be like 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning. I don't know. Depending on where you live, could be at a very, very odd time. But before that, you got Fedor and Bellator taking on Bader. So if I'm not going to try to get parlayed, and I'm just going to put my last 20 bucks down on an underdog, do I wait for the Black Beast or do I put it on Fedor?
I feel like I gotta wait. I feel like if I have a dog who I like more tonight, it's Derek Lewis, because I've seen him in this position before. The last time Fedor and Ryan Bader fought, it wasn't very close. So I'm going off of something that I've seen before. I've seen Ryan Bader clean his clock pretty quickly. Maybe there's a little bit more pressure on him tonight because we're talking about his last fight. I don't feel like Ryan Bader gets shook by that stuff. So for me, I'm looking at it, and if I have to go with a dog tonight, I'm going with Derek Lewis because I feel like he's thrived in this position before. I get Spivak's dangerous, but it is a big step up for him because he's taken on, whatever you think about him, one of the best heavyweights going right now. He's been one of the perennial contenders at heavyweight. Maybe he's hitting in towards gatekeeper territory. I don't think he's that yet. And typically when we put him there, that's usually when he comes up with some big knockout to just say, I'm not dead yet. So if I have to go with the dog, I'm going with Derek tonight.
Hey, before we split, Bud, in the words of Biggie Smalls, it feels like we went from assy to classy in the UFC. It feels like we had all this stuff with the gambling issues and the data issue and, the Ngannou issue. And now, and maybe it's not coincidence now that I talk out loud, we've got all these guys coming back, all these great fights. We're going to see Conor take on Michael Chandler, and then we get Tough, whatever that's worth. We get John Jones taking on Ciryl Gane. We get Justin Gaethje taking on Fiziev. We've got Israel Adesanya taking on Pereira again. We've got Leon Edwards seeing if he can beat Usman again. It just feels like all of a sudden we're back, and all these fights are going to take place in the next couple of months. And not even mention the one next week, Islam taking on Volkanovski. So it feels like all of a sudden, man, we're pretty cool again.
Tapped Out came back on the air, dude. We're back in business. That's all it took. All right. They brought us back, two of the top ambassadors out here, and we got things in line.
I tried to tell the bosses that. I tried to tell the bosses. I was like, if you take us off air, the UFC goes away. And what happened?
Right.
They bring us back, and the promotion is back. Speaking of, we appreciate Eddie Law of Cage Shot Press joining us, as well as the pound-for-pound king, Alexander Volkanovski, for Jake and for Jacob, and of course for Brendan Tobin down there in Miami. I'm the sports machine, Sean Levine. You got to stay up late, but enjoy the fights tonight. You're locked into the BetQL Network. Good night.